Welcome back inside the Now Morning Show. General elections 2025 are just a few days away. By a few, I mean about 35, right? And we want to make sure that you conduct yourself legally during the election campaigning. This morning, to help us understand better what that means, I welcome Inspector Michelle Lewis of the TTPS. Good morning to you, Inspector.
Good morning, Marcus. Good morning to you, my dear. Miss you. Good to see you this morning.
It's wonderful
Good morning,
to see you.
Trinidad and Tobago.
How are you doing this morning, Inspector?
I am good as usual. The TTPS continue to go from strength to strength and keep going from activity to
From activity to activity. Straight out of carnival, straight into the election.
We're actually still in the SOE, you know.
Yes.
Yes, we
And
are.
it's going up until the 15th of
The 13th.
The 13th.
13th of
13th
April.
of April, yeah.
And then at the end of the month, we have parliamentary election on the 28th of
General election
Yes, we do.
2025.
April. So that the TTPS, we continue to switch a bit because we're now looking at election campaigning and all that goes with that and the emotion that goes with that. So the organization, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, as the law enforcement agency, we now have to direct resources and redirect our strategy in relation to keeping law and order during the election period.
Might as well
and
be
the
carnival.
campaign.
Might as well be carnival. The amount of big trucks we expect to see, the
Listen,
amount of
yeah,
gatherings
boy.
we expect to see, it might as well be tantamount to
And
carnival.
all that is legal and all that is fine because
Right.
it is the election campaign and all those things are expected.
Right.
What isn't expected is when persons' peace or their legal rights in terms of their property being destroyed or defaced, that they're not able to enjoy security of their person, meaning that they're being harassed at home or someone is making threats to their lives for whatever reason because maybe they are supporting a particular political party, their vehicle is being damaged. These are things that we have seen happen during election period in the height of the
season.
season.
Yeah.
It does happen, and so it is important that members of the public, citizens, understand that yes, we call this a particular type of season, but you must have your head on to ensure that you do not fall victim to the law, meaning that you would have breached any form of law.
Yeah. I want to ask, Inspector, when it comes to, you mentioned that it's legal to do the campaigning,
Yes,
the
it
big
is.
trucks and all those kind of things, right? But where does that fall in terms of disturbing the peace?
So what happens is that the organizer for the public meeting will write the Commission of Police 48 hours, at least 48 hours, but no more than 14 days, to request permission to have a public meeting.
Right.
And so usually the permission is granted because it's a political meeting. They would request police presence there to assist with the traffic and to keep peace and order as well. And so those things are legitimate and can happen even outside of the carnival of the election period. Because we just out of carnival, right?
Yeah, I understand.
But even outside of the election period, persons do apply to
have gatherings,
to
whether it's
have
for a party
gatherings.
or whatever else.
Yeah, for all sorts of reasons,
Yeah.
restrictions and that kind of thing.
And even protests too, right?
Protest.
Yeah.
So those are things that the police service grant permission for. It's not against the law. And so persons doing the big truck that you speak of, those things happen. We know that election period will run probably on top until the 27th.
Yeah.
And then thereafter, everything shuts down basically, including bars opening on that day. But as we get closer to election, we will speak more of that.
Tell me about, in terms of, you mentioned defacing property, you
Yes.
mentioned harassing people
Yes.
as well. Where do we draw that line between meeting your candidates versus being harassed by somebody?
Yeah, so we know that the candidates with their team will be walking through different communities. In that particular communities, you may have persons who are supporting another political party. And, persons will approach your home, the usual campaigning thing that will happen. When that happens, it is not to say that either the party that is campaigning or the resident is to be disrespectful to the other. That will be a breach of the peace or will cause a retaliation or some kind of argument that may cause a fight. Right? These are things that can happen because, of course, generally speaking, if I am associated with particular parties because I want that particular party to win. The elections will determine that through the democracy that we have, through a free and fair election process.
Yeah.
And so each person has the right to vote, one vote. So that when the campaign teams are going around, we want the public to be very understanding and respectful to each other when they're carrying out their duties legitimately.
Inspector, one of the things that you would have just mentioned previously would have been, of course, as we're speaking about now, the increase in some, let's say, some offences, for example. But one of the things you also mentioned particularly was criminal damage.
Yes.
Out of all of these different offences, is there one that tends to be more prevalent around this time so we can be aware of what to look out for?
You see a lot of fights taking place, fighting. So from an argument, it would...
Verbal and physical.
So like
Yeah,
assaults?
physical.
Right.
Okay.
And then you would also see damage to property.
Okay.
And you'll also see the facing of walls, like hate words and gravity on people's property and that kind of thing. So that, for example, if persons have the camera footage that shows who would have done those things, person will be charged
Right.
for damage to property and defacing people and defacing people's property, injury to persons if there's a fight. So the normal law will prevail in terms of a criminal offense.
In terms of defacing property, right? When people, the flyers, for example, that we see stuck up on lampposts, sometimes on people's walls, does that count as defacing property?
No, so on your wall, on your private property on your wall, it will be.
Right.
The election, the TNTEC, Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission, I know generally speaking, they speak in relation to defacing their own. Correct.
Right.
Whether it's election or people having their party and that kind of thing. But for personal property, like persons sticking up election posters and banners on your private wall, that's not supposed to happen.
Okay.
Right? That is not supposed to happen.
But you can do it to your own property.
I mean, in your own private property, you can do what you want. You can put a flag of whoever you like. That is your business. But in terms of someone else's, you cannot.
Are you aware of what the fines are for if it is you do catch somebody defacing your property?
I can't say offhand. I can provide that information next week.
All right.
But yeah.
Also something would have been mentioned, as you said, these are offences regardless of, what time of year it is.
Yes.
What about recourse, though? Because there are concerns sometimes, let's say somebody comes and defaces my property, as to whether or not I'm actually going to go and report it, because I'm not sure how seriously something like this is going to be taken. Would you recommend, regardless, we continue to push forward and report all of these things?
Yeah, make a report, because that's the only how you will be able to get the redress. Now, there are different types of offences. And so that, a report like that, when we look at the evidence and all that, so it's a report, a criminal report against a person. If it is that you have the evidence to prove the case, it makes the investigation a little easier and faster along the way. For example, if it is that you have CCTV footage and we're able to see the person who would have done so, the vehicle that the person was in, it makes it easier for the investigator to hasten the investigative process. When we don't have sufficient evidence to prove the case, there's where there's a delay in investigation of a matter. For example, the officer may have to go and speak to residents around there if they would have seen anything. And if the resident would be willing to give the information in relation to, if the resident is against a particular party,
they may not give.
They may not give. But it is a criminal offense, and we really warn the members of the public to report it.
Right.
What about defamation of character? One of the things that, of course, happens around election times is we have people saying all sorts of things, accusing people of all sorts of things. Is that a breach of law?
Well, on the political platform, we know there's a particular coverage there, right? On the political platform.
There is coverage?
Yes, there is.
Okay.
On the political platform, right?
Right.
But outside of that, like how we see it on Facebook and that kind of thing, persons still take legal action privately in relation to defamation of character. So we're going to hear a lot of that, and that is really to sway the votes, right? So persons, I'm not Election and Boundaries Commission, but you must be able to decipher what is truth and what is lie, to be able to make a decision.
I'm glad you mentioned social media. This might get a bit into the intricacies of it, but specifically when it comes to evidence. So if I screenshot something, a post, for example, that was on social media, can that be submitted as evidence to the police with regards to a defamation case?
Yes, so it depends. So if it is that the person is saying something that is contrary, that is outright defamation of character.
Outright, yeah.
Right. So we have the cybercrime, the cyber and social media unit.
Right.
And they would, that report, when they make it to any station district, they would pass it on to that unit because they are the technical aspect in the TTPS.
Okay.
And investigate it.
So
but we're going to see a lot of that taking
Yeah.
place there. And we really want to advise persons against it. Because it can take up quite a lot of the resources of the
Exactly.
TTPS. So we really want to advise persons against it and to be responsible.
And the next thing is, Inspector, is also difficult to pretty much assess because at the end of the day, like we had our spotlight this morning was about fake profiles on social media. So if you have fake profiles that spewing this hate and spewing this rhetoric, then who do we even begin to charge? You're going to have to go through the cybercrime to try and find where the source of this is. And in some cases, it might just be a computer that's generating this based on somebody setting it up however long ago. And then we end up in a whole rigmarole of wasting resources, essentially.
Correct. Wasting resources and so that when that investigation, as I say, because it's going to be a long process based on
the algorithms and finding the fake profiles and sourcing the right people behind
because
it.
persons know that election is coming around, right?
Yeah.
So it is important, and I repeat it again, for persons to be responsible and respectful during the election period.
Right.
It is not that you're going to try to find where the loopholes are in the law to see what offense or how offensive you can be to another person, right? We really want persons to be responsible. Persons are entitled to canvass, to campaign and all of that during the election, but we also want you to be very responsible and very mindful of the rights of another person. Liberty to move, so that if you are in a particular area and a vehicle is passing, allow the vehicle to pass, allow the person to leave or enter their driveway. These are things that happen during the election period that prevents and causes, animosity to take place, fight and argument and those kind of things to take place, which can be avoided.
Yeah.
When we look at the level of crime and violence, and sometimes we see it on social media, one little thing can cause a death to someone because of the way how they react to something. So these are things that we really want persons to be mindful of and to guard against, so that they do not become a victim of an offense or they do not die during the election period.
Or become a perpetrator by accident as well. All right. Well, Inspector, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We look forward to more of this conversation. I imagine we'll get into some more details again next month.
Yes, we will. Certainly as election comes closer.